Why do you want them to listen to your podcast?
So that when they think about starting a business, they've got the content that is pointing them in the right direction.
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
The change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
But there are plenty of people that listen to the podcast that will react to that one. I'm sure I'll hear from them.
You get a few. Got to keep them on their toes a little bit.
That's it. Yeah. So anyway, back to what you're doing for your business.
Mm-hmm.
See if we can stay focused.
Yeah,
Oh, good. So, yeah, your business focus is on horticulture, right? And does that mean you don't do lawn mowing, or do you?
No, I still do lawn mowing as well, but it's not the sole focus of the business. The vast majority of what I'm doing is complete garden maintenance. So you're doing hedging, hand weeding, pruning, pest and disease management, fertilizing. I also offer irrigation audits once a year as well. Part of my role at Lucas House and Gardens was I did a lot of the troubleshooting on the irrigation systems.
Fun.
Yeah, well, no one else wanted to do it, so I kind of put my hand up for that one. I've taken to it quite well. Like, I actually quite enjoy it. I don't mind it. It's just like big kids Lego, as I tell most people.
Yeah. Well, before I was doing insurance, one of the first things I did out of school was working in IT. So I can really appreciate that diagnostic approach to fault finding.
Yeah, look, one of the units I did in my studies was irrigation design. So having that foundation was really helpful when I was working at Lucas to then be able to put it into practice while I was working.
Yeah.
So I offer those kind of services. So two days of the week I'm doing garden maintenance, and then the other two I'm doing landscaping. It's mostly softscaping. I do a little bit of paving, a little bit of hardscaping elements, but I also subcontract out work to other contractors, landscape contractors, to do like retaining walls and stuff like that for clients. And
yeah, fair enough.
I am doing a little bit of design as well, but it's still early days, and I actually think I'll do a bit of study early next year on landscape design, just to formalise some of the things that I'm kind of experimenting with at the moment and using.
Yeah, so you'd be doing this for the existing clients that you've got, or to grow your business into a new?
So the landscaping side of things is mostly one-offs. Some of them I take on as maintenance clients as well.
Yeah.
So it's like one of the projects I just finished recently was, it was 180 hours worth of man hours over 2 weeks. I had 4 guys working with me on it. And so I'll be rolling them into my maintenance schedule upon completion. So I've still got 2 little bits to finish off there in the next week or so. And that took me 8 months to get across the line, for instance. Yeah. So some of these projects, and it was worth it though, in the fact that it was very profitable. A really good project to work on too, because it's going to be a nice one to have on my portfolio, I have to say. And so I've been slowly letting go of some of my older clients that I'm no longer engaged with anymore. Like as the business has evolved and as I've grown the business, and I've put my rates up towards the end of last financial year, I've had to let go of some of those first clients that I took on. Unfortunately, it was one of the hardest things I had to do.
Yep.
Yeah, it was not an easy conversation. I'm very grateful for their business over those 4 years that I was servicing them, but it unfortunately wasn't profitable for me to keep them on if I'm looking long term to employ someone down the track.
So do you mind talking about some of the financial side of that with us at the moment? Because I know that's one of the things that listeners are really looking for in terms of talking numbers and profitability on jobs and what a job's worth. So you mentioned before your average client, you're looking at around $5,000 a year.
Yep.
But if you're talking about clients you had to let go, what sort of financial aspects are we looking at with those ones?
So that for reference, they were $1,000 to $2,000 a year annually, roughly working out around $60 an hour, an hourly rate.
Yeah.
Where
Okay.
where I'm sitting now around 95 an hour.
Yep.
And I tried to grandfather them in and slowly, progressively put the prices up, but it just got up to a point where we couldn't meet in the middle within the case of
Yeah.
the conversation. So it's a hard, like, eventually you got to do it,
Yeah.
And there's so much work out there at the moment that I filled it straight away. So it's not like it's been an issue.
And that's something I like to give people that insight with. I think it's really important to talk about how you manage that, how you move those customers to where they need to be, or shake hands and part ways.
Yeah, look, and I'm still learning, and I don't know if I did it completely correct the first one, and second one got a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I've supplied them with other providers and contact details so that they can then seek someone else out if they need that.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be completely without, because one of them I'd been managing for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And they were an elderly couple as well.
Yep.
But yeah, it's I've got to do what's right by the business at this stage of its growth. And
yeah. When it comes to gardening, there's not a lot you can do on one property for $1,000 to $2,000 for a year. You really can't. Either you can't do it justice, or your rate is way too low, so you're spending more time there than you're getting paid for.
Yep, and that's what
sounds like
I was working that out. And look, it was one of the first jobs I ever quoted was that initial one that I was just talking about, which was $1,000.
Yeah.
And I think I did I did a retaining wall. I repaired a retaining wall for them. This was on the bike still too, by the way. I got everything delivered. That's hilarious.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I managed to get it done, and I think I was charging out at $40 an hour, $50 an hour, something like that. And by the end of the week, when I'd finished the job, I was absolutely gutted and exhausted and miserable by the end of it, and was like, I can't do this way. It was a very, very steep learning curve. But yeah, I sat around $60 an hour for most of the last 4 years, and then when I started the business last year, I kicked it up to $80 an hour, and then I've jumped up to 95 start of this financial year.
Yeah. So are you moving towards adding GST on that, or is that including GST?
That's including GST at this stage.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
But like, I think as my reputation grows, I may be able to. Ideally, I'd like to get up around 100, 120 eventually. But I think at this stage of the business, and what I'm delivering is comparable for that, and the market where it is at the moment. I think that's excluding products and stuff like that. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah, green waste removal, I charge 140 a cubic meter. Pest treatments, starting at $5 a litre. Snail baits, around the $3 a cup kind of thing. So that's just a few, just to give some people some ideas of what products and stuff and services I'm selling. I also offer foliar feeding quite in most of my packages, because I've found that really helps reduce pest pressure and helps manage. I've done a few consults with Graham Sate from MTS. He's a big proponent of the regenerative agricultural space. He's got his own podcast. It's actually worth having a listen, guys, if anyone's interested in regenerative agriculture and plant management. He talks into the biochemistry of plants and how to use foliar feeds to combat pest and disease problems. And
so what's the name of his podcast?
Let me get back to you on that.
What was his name?
Graham Sate.
Graham Sate.
Yeah. Just,
Yeah, okay.
let's quickly look it up. I can't remember.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's good to give people these resources. And like you're saying, that when you're talking regenerative agriculture and practices that allow a garden like you're looking after to be kept more naturally, you're going to talk to us about some more natural practices in a minute. I know that's important. And I think
Sorry.
that factors in if we stay down the financial path for a little bit as well. That factors in
Yeah, no,
significantly.
like I said, I'm
How you
happy to
quoted
talk about any of my numbers as well.
Yeah,
It's Nutrition Farming Podcast from Graham
yeah.
State. And
Nutrition
then you've
farming.
got, Nutrition Farming Podcast. And then you've got Advancing Eco Agriculture from John Kemp. He's an American farmer, though.
Yeah, okay.
Graham State's an Australian one, so it's a bit more relevant to our climate and everything like that.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, did you want to talk about the numbers now, or did you?
Yeah, so on the numbers, I think we've given people some insight with an hourly rate there, but I think it's really relevant to give people the perspective that if you just talk hourly rates, then you miss the point with some of these things. And I know talking hourly rates or annual turnover, I get a little bit of pushback occasionally from people who say that that's not going to help people understand if you're profitable or not. So I think it does help, but for a lot of people, they see that and they go, okay, that doesn't really help me understand if you're profitable.
Yeah. So for me, a profitable day is anything over $500 a day, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, like I try to aim for the $700 to $800 a day.
Yeah. So under 500, you're barely breaking even, but over 500, you're making a profit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When everything's said and done with my expenses and living costs and all that, that's included in that as a sole trader. If I was looking at it from a business perspective, it would probably be a little bit less just on that.
Yeah, but like you're saying, you're also separating out costs that are material costs aside from your labour rates, etc. So
yeah. And like when I've got my material rates and stuff included in the hourly rate, after profit from those, it kind of works out to be around 140 an hour, 120 on most of my jobs.
Yeah,
if you work it out as an hourly rate like that.
It's amazing how different perspectives look when you start talking hourly rates. And I've talked about this on numerous occasions. So materials is a massive one in terms of the difference it would make to your hourly rate. But often for me, what I talk about is how long you spend on a job. So the guy that I interviewed or released last week, he's doing 15-minute jobs and I'm in one place all day.
See, I'm doing two jobs or one job a day. It's
yeah. So if you're doing 15 minutes and then you move and then you do another 15 minutes and then you move, your hourly rate needs to be different to somebody who's parked in one place all day because of your cost of doing business is different. And likewise, if you're doing gardening where you've got material costs that come into most of those clients over the course of a year, then you might say, all right, that's a $4,000 client, but with materials, it's a $5,500, $6,000 client.
Yep.
And you still make some markup on materials, I'm sure. Most people do.
So 50% is usually where I'm sitting for most materials. And I buy things in bulk as well. So like I've just bought a couple pallets of fertilizer and a few other materials that I use in large quantities, like snail bait and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep. And that gets you, if you're looking at a 40% savings off retail prices for buying things by pallet. You've just got to have somewhere to store it, which I'm lucky enough to have a reasonable sized garage at my house.
Yeah. So how many clients do you balance to keep you busy?
At the moment, I've got 20 that I'm doing. So no, it's 20 at the moment. Regularly.
Yeah. And what would you be aiming for?
Oh, that's me full at the moment. Like I'm not taking on any more maintenance clients at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Landscaping, I need like so over the next 2 months, I'm pretty much booked out for landscaping and maintenance.
Yep.
But I'm looking to take on some new ones in November.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so end of November, I need to start filling in the calendar.
Yeah. And this is why I'd like to talk about numbers, because what works for you is not going to be the same as the next person. And for a lot of people who do lawn mowing clients, they will spend anywhere from 5 minutes on a job to an hour on a job in typical lawn mowing clients. And so those sort of businesses rely on having 50 to 200 customers.
And so look with those 20, there's probably 10 on the regular, and then there's 10 that there's a couple of hedges that I go and do just every quarter and stuff like that. But I'd say most of my clients now are on the fortnightly to monthly schedules. Out of those 10.
And that's pretty good for gardening. I think there are the occasional gardens where you want to be there weekly. But
with the lawns, if they need to be done weekly, which a lot of them do, I actually have a friend who does the lawns in between when I'm there as well.
Okay, yeah.
So I get Chris to do that. And if there's anyone else out there that is working in Melbourne Inner East, please reach out, because I do have other clients that need their lawns done more regularly than I can offer them at the moment. So,
well, Gavin, I've got a proposition for you. Have you heard of robotic mowers?
I actually wanted to talk to you about this because I've got a couple of clients who are interested in this, and I've been talking to them about it, and it would be something I would like to offer as a service.
Yeah.
Efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages, and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas, and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through to 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money season after season.
Has the technology really gotten to the stage where it's the wireless ones anyway?
Yes.
Because
Definitely.
renovations are important. Like, we've got to be able to get in there with the core and aerate and stuff like that. And I had one client at Lucas that had the wire in there, and it was just a nightmare.
Yeah. There is a good place for having them with the wire in the ground. There are some reasons why that's beneficial at times, but now there are several options around that don't have a wire in the ground. They are cost effective and better than having a machine with the wire in the ground. So if you're looking to rule out or exclude clients that are not suitable, look at the tree coverage and the amount of open sky they've got for access to satellite imaging, that sort of thing, so that they've got to have fairly clear sky to be able to work well with an RTK GPS. Some of them now will do a combination of RTK GPS and artificial intelligence imaging. So there's a bunch of different things now. But yeah, interestingly, I would say that the two brands that are going to make it really easy for you to do this would be Segway with the Navimo, and Luba is the other one that comes in. So the Momotion Luba.
Sorry, I'm just going to write these down just quickly.
That's right. Yeah. So the Segway Navimo I've been working over the last 12 months is a 3,000 square metre mower, which is 3,000 square metres is 3/4 of an acre. But for the purposes of trying to explain this to you, I've got it working on two properties beside each other that are basically a total of 3,000 square metres on those properties, and it does 900 square metres of mowing between them. So you've got to have a fairly large lawn before you actually put that to work.
That probably, like, that size would not be applicable to what my context is at all.
So the brilliant thing,
I think the average would be like, between 50 square and probably 400 square is probably the average lawns in the gardens I'm managing, I reckon, on the higher end, you know.
So the brilliant thing there is that Segway just released a new version of the Navimo. It's coming in at under $2,000 and doesn't need a wire in the ground. So it is probably going to be the best value robot mower on the market at this point in time.
Well, say I take an hour off of my visits from my clients for them to buy. This is how I can sell it to the clients. If it's $2,000 upfront cost, you know, an hour off the visit, you know, annually, it's pretty much the same equivalent. Over 2-3 years, it's paid for itself.
Oh, there's so many ways you can sell this to a client. So you could sell the robot to them directly, and it reduces their weekly or monthly costs, whatever you might look at. The other one is that you pay for the cost of the robot and you keep on charging them the same amount.
Oh, so you just take it from job to job?
No. So I put a robot on one job. It stays there all the time and it keeps the lawn tidy all the time, and the client pays me even though I'm not there.
I'll have to look into that. I'm not quite how you sell that to them, though, because they could just go out and buy one, couldn't they, themselves?
Depends on the client. What do they want? Do they want to buy one themselves, or do they want you to be responsible for making sure the job's done?
Yeah, true. So you just charging them like an annual fee for having the mower there all year, or how's that work?
Well, for myself, I'm putting them on commercial premises only, and that's just part of the contract that I've got with them to make sure their premises is kept. But the interview I did with Richard Hogan a couple of years ago now, he had residential customers where he's doing the same thing, and so what he would do is he would put a cheap robot in their backyard, and he would charge them the same amount as if he was doing the whole lot all the time, but he would turn up and do the front and the whippersnipping. And then if he got rained out and he couldn't do the physical work, he would charge them a smaller bill for that fortnight because the robot's still keeping the backyard tidy.
Interesting. Yeah, I might have to explore this idea a little bit more, I think. It sounds like a good idea.
Well, the alternatives weren't great. I mean, they were still interesting, but the alternatives were not great a couple of years ago because you had to have a fairly expensive installation process. So for a small yard like you're talking about, $200 to $500 for the installation, plus the cost of the robot, and then maintenance, all that sort of thing. But now if you install a robot that doesn't have a wire in the ground, your customer could do it themselves. It's that easy to do. But you go and install it.
I'm thinking of just selling it at a markup to the clients is probably the easiest way to go about it for me, in the residential setting anyway. But then you're only getting a one-off payment. So,
well, and of course that would also be reliant on you getting wholesale pricing to make it worth it.
Yeah, which wouldn't be hard to do.
Yeah, you could. I'm sure you could talk to your local dealer or a distributor somewhere. You could probably work out a wholesale distribution deal. But I would say the model that works best is the one I've gone to and Richard Hogan went to, which is I own the robot. You don't own the robot. I own it, and you're paying me a service fee the same as you were before. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's a better model. But I mean,
yeah, it's a more profitable one long term for sure. Like that's obvious.
For the customer who is already a customer, they are used to paying for a service. So if you're saying to them that service is going to be improved in quality and continuing, but you keep paying me, then there's not a lot of customers that see that as a negative. So instead of you mowing the lawn, and you get this as a gardener, right? Like if you prune a hedge once every 12 months, it's going to get thin. It's going to get.
Look, I'm sold on the health of the lawns. Like that's not even an argument. I know that it's going to look better.
Well, for your customer, all you got to do is say your lawn, instead of getting cut once a fortnight or once a month, it's going to get cut every day or every second day, depending on how you program it.
Less weed pressure, I'm guessing, as well from it. I'm guessing all those benefits.
Yeah. But for my own backyard, I was spending 2 or 3 hours twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, mowing it with a cylinder mower. And that's why it's called a silly mower, because it's ridiculous the amount of time you put in. But now I'm out there going, maybe I should put some fertilizer on it. Maybe I should make the robot work harder.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, I'll have to explore that a little bit more. I never even thought to do it that way. Like, so you're saying $2,000 up front probably cost for one of these little mowers?
Yeah, so jump online and do a search for the Segway
No,
Navimo I series.
don't worry, I will. I've got it written
So
down.
the Segway Navimo I series is the ones you want to look at. They've got an i5 and an i8. The i5 will do up to 500 square meters.
Okay, cool. No, that's interesting.
If-
Yeah, I never thought to build a business model out like that. Like actually just having it, renting it out pretty much to the clients.
Yeah. If the Segway can't manage it, it's going to be because of the slopes on your lawn.
Well, these are all really flat lawns, so it wouldn't even be a problem.
Yeah.
I'd say the vast majority of what I'm managing at the moment, I'm fortunate, aren't very hilly at all.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're dealing with slopes, I'd say go and look at the Luba 2. But otherwise, the Segway's great, and Segway's that price point is really easy for people to get their head around.
Interesting. Yeah, I never would have thought to do it that way. It's there. It's a service fee. You just paid me for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it just makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like having irrigation in the ground, right?
Yeah, for sure. But
you're providing a benefit there. You're managing it.
I'm managing it, but they've paid the upfront costs for the kit. A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a way to do that. I could also just charge a service fee, once a month for managing it for them. Check the blades, kind of thing like that. That could be something.
Well, with the robot mowers, I would say that you're going to be looking at changing the blades every 6 to 12 weeks. So if it's working hard, I don't know what your lawns are like with your customers, but if it's got a lawn that it's working particularly hard, 6 weeks.
Most of them are Buffalo or Kikuyu. You got a few on the RTS fescues, which is a nice fescue lawn that's used quite commonly here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of them are Buffalo.
What I've found, most lawns in my area, and there's not a lot of cooch or any really fine grass here. There's still some, but not a lot. The first start with the robotic mower, you find that your blades are going to get worn out quicker because the robot's working hard to get it at the desired height and then maintain that. Once it's been doing that for 4 to 6 weeks, then it's in a pattern where it's just maintaining it. It's just taking a tiny little bit off each day, and it's not working hard. The blades will last 12 weeks, maybe even twice that. But yeah, if you have lawns that are particularly thick and thatchy, or some cooch lawns, like everyone says, you have to catch cooch, right? Because if you don't catch it, it looks terrible. And I would say for the same reason, you'll find with a robot mower that it's going to work a little bit harder to keep the cooch tidy.
Look, if we're managing it properly, it shouldn't be all thatched up anyway,
Exactly, right? So if it's been cut daily, then it's unlikely to be a problem.
Yeah, interesting. Cool.
But yeah, you've got to get it there in the first place. That's why I say the first 4 to 6 weeks, it can be wearing the blades out quicker.
Well, like a lot of my lawns are on, they get a reno once a year, just about. So it's, I come in and scalp, dethatch, core.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a top dress here and there if it needs it. We've got very heavy clay soils here in Melbourne, so a lot of them have been laid on inappropriate subsurfaces. So top dressing is really essential in a lot of ways, just to combat the compaction and a lot of those problems that come with heavy clay soils.
Yeah, it's a bit of a process, isn't it, when you're talking about a soil profile that is challenging to work with, and the time it takes or the effort it takes just to get it to the point where it's actually quite decent.
A lot of there's a lot of information out online where it says you only should be putting down an 80 mil sub base, and that's 80 to 100 mil sub base, and it's just not adequate enough, especially if you're laying onto like white clay that's just been clean filled and cut back from a new build. 200 mil minimum at minimum.
Yeah, the amount of new builds that I've seen done where they haven't put topsoil in, it's lucky to be 50 mil of topsoil.
Yeah, and it won't have a problem for the first year or so, and then maybe 2 years later down the track, it starts to have some problems.
I've seen with the ones I've looked after there, the problems arrived by the time the turf had settled.
Ouch. Yeah, it's painful.
It's not a good look for the developer, but then they try and blame the person maintaining it. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not having a bar of that.
No, let's just dig a hole and find out how much you put down. It's not hard.
Oh, you could see it. They put wood chip on the garden beds to hide the fact that the garden beds had no soil in them at all. It was just clay. Zero soil.
Yeah, 50 mil you usually find of topsoil, and that's all they've sprinkled on top and thrown some black mulch on top of it. And it's like, no, that's not suffice at all. It's not going to suffice.
Yeah, so you can pretty quickly tell where developers have put effort in and where they haven't put effort in.
Look, it's not just the developers; it's the builders and stuff that are involved in the landscaping as well. But like their margins are so thin on these things anyway, so you can't really blame them either at the same time.
Well, I guess if you look at the difference between a new subdivision and an old subdivision, it comes down to how much time the homeowners have reinvested into maintaining it as they go, right?
And most people don't really care about their gardens these days anyway, unfortunately.
Well, they either don't care about it or they're paying you and I to take care of it.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I like that it looks good, and that's all that matters. And that I think is probably one of the hardest part of this job. I think for me, because I love working. I'm a gardener as a hobby as well. I like being in my own garden quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is that when it's not appreciated, it's frustrating, isn't it? You go out and you do this immaculate job in the place, and you go, "Oh, did you see that last time I was here?" And they're like, "No, didn't even twig that." It's like, "Oh, cool, good chat."
Yeah, that's it.
I'm fortunate. I have to say, most of my clients really appreciate their outdoor spaces, and they actually do engage with it quite regularly. So it's nice to have that feedback from them when I've left. Getting a text every once in a while, "Oh, really happy with the garden, the way it looks." It goes a long way. It's nice to hear those things from time to time.
It's good to know, and I'm the same with my podcasting. I make sure that I chase feedback. But when you get feedback regularly from your clients, you know that whether you're doing the right thing or not. And, the more positive feedback you get, the better. So I actually, with the podcast, I actually try and look for where the bad feedback's coming from so that I can really assess whether I'm doing well, because positive feedback tends to come through naturally. The negative feedback is a little bit harder to find sometimes.
No one likes those hard conversations, let's be honest about it. Most people avoid them. So
yeah, but it's incredibly valuable to know. And I think talking about businesses, if you're talking residential lawns, and the average lawn care business will have a turnover of probably 2 to 5% of customers from year to year, of people who don't actually tell you that they don't like the service, they just leave.
Well, it's interesting. Like working for James at Lucas House and Gardens, for instance, we used to get, because it's such a large operation, you tended to get a lot more emails coming in of complaints than you did compliments. So it was the other way around. So
yeah.
It's funny to see that dynamic shift from me going out on my own full time and then noticing that. It is something that I've picked up on.
You notice that when you put on an employee too. So when you put on an employee and the customer comes out and they're like, "Oh, hang on a minute, that's not Gavin here." On the phone, "Hey, Gavin, your employee missed a spot." And then, "Hey, Gavin, your employee's having a smoke in my backyard."
it's interesting. Like, one thing I used to stamp into a lot of the other team leaders at Lucas was that developing those relationships with the client is so important, and actually talking to them. When you arrive on site, introduce yourself, say hello, have a conversation with them, get to know them. Like, you're in the home. Like, this is pretty intrusive. Like, you're stepping into their domain. You want to be tread lightly and actually have a conversation with them.
You want to be their friend.
Yep. It goes a long way. It really, really does. I think it gets underlooked by a lot of people in the industry, is actually developing those relationships with your client and spending the time talking to them. Every time I arrive on site, it's, I go up to the door, depending on what time it is. If it's really early in the morning, I'm not going to knock straight away. I'll wait till about 9 and then knock again. But I'll knock up, I'll say hello, say, is there anything you're interested in me looking at today in the garden? Is there anything that you wanted to flag? Have a chat to them, ask them how their week's been, how's the kids?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be groundbreaking stuff. Like, it's just be polite and genuine and get to know them. Like, they're investing money in you and your service.
That's smart advice.
It served me really well. I don't know. I think maybe from my hospitality background, I think I picked that up from that, Always up for a chat.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.